We're here with Nick Lowery, who is a former American footballer kicker. Who is Nick Lowery?
When we moved into 6803 Hampshire Road in McLean, Virginia, because my dad was CIA, the very same day, Justice Byron White and his wife Marion moved in next door. And that second day, I came out in our front yard, and there was this familiar-looking, bright red-haired man with his dog, and it was Bobby Kennedy. This was 1962, and I was just a very little kid. I did major in government. I did work in the White House. I go to the same school with Al Gore. I did go to school with Kennedys. I did play basketball with Neil Bush, W's brother. That's in my blood. But what's really in my blood is the spirit of John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, which I feel emotion coming up right now, which is...
If you were to give the listeners a key, what is that one key for them?
Well, the key is...
Hello, my queens. Welcome back with Keys to the Queendom. I am your host, Tamara Meyer, and I'm so excited for this episode to drop for you guys because, one, this amazing human I've met all the way in America, and I think it's really important that I was just having this conversation with my client just before, and I feel this is really, really important that anyone who's listening right now who's really focusing on building an empire, being in proximity and just making impact. Nick Lowery, who is a former NFL player. He has had an 18-year career in the NFL as well, and he was a kicker as well, which I think is an absolutely incredible thing to be. And he's just a legendary. And I really want to bring this forward because, as I said, I met him over in America, and I was saying to my client just before, I didn't know why I went to America when I did. I was given an opportunity to go to a mastermind, and it was in a really weird time for me where I wanted to go for longer with Jordan and I. We had a lot of things on that month, and there was a window where we could probably go to America, and it was a 6-day trip. Now, being in Australia, you can imagine traveling there, we gained a day, but we literally were on go since we were there. And a lot of people were like, why did you go to America and just for 6 days? And, who are the people you met, right? But the thing about Nick Lowery, yes, he's a public figure. Let's talk actually a legendary figure, right? But I'm so grateful that even though when I went to America, I had no idea why I was going. I just knew that I wanted to really network and be in proximity and be around individuals that are working hard, that are really on mission and are just good fucking humans, right? And if you're listening and you're like worried and scared to make these big, bold moves when it comes to your business, take it for me, for example, where I went to America and I had no idea what the outcome was going to be. Fast forward now, we're in April. Maybe you're listening to this and it's May. The growth we've had in our company has been outstanding. The list of people I have as friends and as people that I can see doing partnership with, as well as seeing these incredible relationships being built overseas, I now know that I'm here to be doing something in America with my company. Right? I still don't know how that looks like. But Nick Lowery is a really great person who really embodies the work of giving to contribute. And his story, even as a football player and 18 years of being in that industry, talks about the athlete mindset, the discipline that comes with it, really owning your craft and knowing that we all have addictions, right? But it's looking at what addictions we have that are good that we can really put energy into. And he is literally a symbol of hope and inspiration for so many individuals. And now he's really big on this incredible foundation that he's built, which is really working with children, not just children, with families, with people who have been homeless. And he really is all about giving back. And I think his network of people from the Kennedys, he's worked at the White House as well, and he went to Harvard. Like, this person is literally first class, but he's so humble in what he does. He's the City Chiefs Hall of Fame. And I think when you listen to this podcast, you're going to really connect with him on a deeper level, but more importantly, an emotional level, because he's just a beautiful soul. Now, if this hasn't, inspired you to, listen, I really want you to actually just envision this for me, right? what can I do more from an impact perspective? What can I do more when it comes to contributing? And how can I really lean into the fear and put myself out there, whether it's traveling to America, whether it's building a podcast, whether it's like networking with people in Australia? I want you guys to really see the power of proximity. And maybe the proximity is for you guys to come into my world, right? Anyway, without further ado, this is an incredible podcast with my special friend, Nick Lowery. Enjoy, my beautiful humans. And hello, everyone. We are back with Keys to the Queendom. I'm here with an incredible human, which I met last year. I got in trouble just before for being late, but we're here with Nick Lowery, who is a former American footballer kicker. And we're really excited to dive deep into your story and, more importantly, just understand your meaning of success, what you're working through now. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm good. This very quick story. So my father's name was Sydney, or is Sydney. My grandfather's name was Sydney, and my grandfather, who was a British diplomat in Egypt, in Cairo, Egypt, was going to retire with his bride to Sydney, Australia. And unfortunately, when my mother was 14, my grandfather was killed in a two-seater plane accident in Cairo, and he's still buried in Cairo, Egypt. So there's a tale of Sydney. I've been to Sydney for a week, and then I went down to Dunk Island and to Cairns. I did some scuba diving many years ago.
You know what's funny? I did scuba diving in Cairns too, but it was the worst experience. So I would love to go back. Yeah. And it was my first diving experience too. So it was, when you had this image that was going to be really beautiful and tropical, it was torrential rain and storms. But you'll have to come back to Sydney. I think you'll absolutely love it.
I will. And you know what? I went for 2 weeks, and I came to the conclusion that you need to come for 3 weeks to make it a bit more palatable, because it's so much flying. But what I might do is spend, a little time there in Hawaii on the way out. I was just in Hawaii just a week ago.
I love Hawaii too. And I think it was what I did last time when I came up to America, when I spent that time at the mastermind with James Whitaker and yourself. It was just so beautiful to connect with you and to get to know you more. But for the listeners, who do not know who you are, who is Nick Lowery and what is your mission today?
Well, I would say my mission is to take advantage of God's gifts that are unique in everyone and unique in me, and the incredible blessings of being surrounded by some of the more remarkable people in American history, literally growing up. And ironically, one of those people is the son of the best friend of my next door neighbor growing up, a guy named Justice Byron Whizzer White. Was a newly approved U.S. Supreme Court justice who actually had been a Rhodes Scholar in London and became best friends with Bobby and John F. Kennedy and Joe Kennedy, who were sons of the then ambassador from the United States to London right before the war, World War II. And when we moved into 6803 Hampshire Road in McLean, Virginia, because my dad was CIA, my dad was very, very senior. He's an expert on Russia and Eastern Europe. And we moved in there, and the very same day, Justice Byron White and his wife Marion moved in next door to 6801 Hampshire Road. Now, this is a man who not only would go on to serve 31 years in the U.S. Supreme Court, but he led the National Football League in rushing, where I played for 18 years. He led the NFL in rushing twice for 2 different teams in 3 years. And one of those years, he happened to not only lead the league in rushing, which is, the rushing title, which is one of the great titles you can have in football, American football, but also finished number 1 at Yale Law School. And that second day of him being with his wife and family, Barney and Nancy were their children next door, I came out in our front yard, and we had a lot of new trees, so it was easier to see the other houses because there weren't these big bushy trees around. And there was this familiar looking, bright red-haired man with his dog, his retriever, talking to Justice White in the front yard. And it was Bobby Kennedy. This was 1962, and I was just a very little kid, 6 years old. And tonight I'm going to be with Bobby Kennedy Jr., who I think is, without question, the most refreshing candidate, the most refreshing ideas, the most independent, literally, of the, really, unfortunately, I think rather corrupted parties we have in the system. And while I don't want to talk too much about politics, since I did major in government, I did work in the White House, I did work for 4 U.S. senators, I did grow up in Washington, D.C., I did go to the same school with Al Gore, who was 10 years ahead of me. I did go to school with Kennedys. I did play basketball on the varsity basketball team with Neil Bush, W's brother. That's in my blood. But what's really in my blood is the spirit of John F. Kennedy and Bobby Kennedy, which I feel emotion coming up right now, which is the most favorite, powerful phrase perhaps in the history of any inaugural speech, which is ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, which is not, to me, about, just military service. It's how each of us, whether it's Tamara or Nick or anyone watching, can make a difference using their unique gifts, even if it's just helping one person find their own purpose. So my mission, with a long-winded answer to your question, is to help people feel this same level of passion and emotion and belief that they can make a true difference, that they have a unique form of what I would call divine power, which is connected to their divine purpose. And when they know they have that, they are indestructible, and they have the will and the imagination to work through all of this is a technical term, and you can cut it out if you want, all of the drama, all of the trauma, all of the adversity, all of the stuff that we all go through. Even the greatest people in history went through this stuff. In fact, we may measure them by just how much they endured, because they had more dumped on them than even Job may have in the Bible. They had so much dumped on them, but they always found a way to triumph. And one thing I just want to turn it around and say I love about your energy is you're all about transcending, overcoming, growing. So back at you,
Nick. I really, really just want to say thank you. I get emotional when people talk about their mission, and the fact that you spoke about to serve, which is, as you said, a higher power and the divine energy too. And it's just so beautiful that you've had role models, you've had people that have seen something in you, and it just makes a difference, doesn't it? And I assume this is what led you to be in the resilience of sport. Tell me more. Around perseverance and tough times, like what was life like in the early stages of your career?
Well, I can't separate out having great parents and stability that not everybody has. I was so lucky to have great parents, to have had parents that had both served in World War II, and that framework. Tom Brokaw, the famous anchor for NBC in the United States for a long time, wrote a book called The Greatest Generation. He talked about what was it about that generation, Australia being another part of our allies that did the same, to sacrifice so much, and yet to emerge from being confronted with the greatest evil you can possibly imagine, where my own mother, Hazel Bray at that point in the Women's Royal Navy, who was part of the intelligence service and had served at Bletchley. If you study history, Bletchley was the center for decoding the German messages and hopefully anticipating and averting a lot of attacks. And if we had not succeeded in that, we may not have won the war. And to have had parents that understood and literally engaged and saw this evil. My father flying a Piper Cub with no armor for General Patton's Third Army, 32 missions right over the German lines, right over the artillery, calling into their own artillery, seeing soldiers shooting back at him, having two of his friends hit in the air by their own shells, to be experienced in what that means, that incredible pain of losing loved ones, the sacrifice and the exhilaration of fighting the good fight, that made that generation help us live in safety and peace and prosperity and a sense of our own purpose in the world. And so that's my foundation. And then I had mentors. We didn't have the $1 million salaries in my father's career, but we had $1 million people, human beings. Whether it was Justice White, I just told you about, who was like a Mount Rushmore of heroes, or whether it was smaller mentors, but just as important or more so, in Dick Johnson, who was a retired stockbroker who coached me in kicking. And the kicking analogy, which I definitely want to bring into this interview, is the idea that, like the kicker in the National Football League game, you're not in the flow like you are in Australian rules football. You are waiting for your time. You are waiting, and then you have to be ready, because every single kick everyone sees. And my book coming out is called Naked and Alone with 80,000 People, because that feeling of being completely vulnerable and naked in front of all these people, and they're going to remember not only the ones you make, but absolutely everyone you miss, even if you miss just one or two, like I did. That takes time. So to get used to that, I had to have a mentor keep saying, take care of this. Learn how to control your mind. Learn how to relax, to not be quite so ADD, to learn to integrate your mind and your body for something important and to prepare for it. And so literally that coach, our last game of my high school career against our arch rival, the two oldest schools, private schools in Washington, D.C., Landon School and St. Albans School, the National Cathedral School for boys. We're losing 7-6, and we're driving in literally the mud and the rain.
Wow. Lots
of wind, 5,000 people, which in a high school game was quite a few. And because we prepared for it individually, but also as a team, we were able to run on the field with 20 seconds left, no timeouts left. So that meant the clock was going to run. You couldn't stop it, which is what happens in American football a lot. And I kicked the game-winning field goal from 43 yards with 2 seconds left, went through the uprights with no time left. And the video of the game, Tamara, is the other team, all the 2,000 fans from the other team running on the field, because no one ever made a field goal from that far or in those circumstances. And then there's a delay because they thought they'd won the league championship. And then suddenly all our fans ran on the field, and many of them jumping on me. And that's a billboard, an emotional billboard in your memory that I can do it. I can rise to that occasion. And that was a sign of going into college. But once again, that mentor was still there for me, because it was always about not just saying I did it, therefore I'm great, but no, I have to get ready for the next one. I have to humble myself and stay hungry and learn to prepare under higher and higher and higher standards. And that to me is what you and I can hopefully help people understand is greatness, hopefully, is not only your own. Get emotional again.
I know.
Being around those people, and Bobby Kennedy tonight, I'm so excited to see him, because it's taking the goodness in you, which the goodness is more important than the greatness, and giving it to other people and continuing to say, how do I use this? So it was about football, and I went on to become the most accurate kicker in NFL history. But also it was being rejected by 8 teams 11 times and just not giving up. And I have a feeling that almost every one of your shows talks about those moments of truth when we failed or perceived or others have thought we failed, and we have to dig somewhere we didn't know we had. And that never stops. That to me that's the secret. That's the key to staying fully alive, is keep putting that key in that lock into your best self, which requires discipline and constant commitment and humility, which is hard for athletes because we come out of a very narcissistic culture. And, part of us wants to make it, part of us wants the trophy. But the biggest trophy is something you can't see, but you know at the deepest level.
No, Nick. And I just want to acknowledge just your beautiful journey and like the ups and downs through that. Like it gets me emotional too. And you're right in saying that, it's in those tough periods where you're so close at a breaking point that you're having a breakthrough. And I can just imagine the
Yeah.
mentors that were there for you. You would have had to essentially like envision that kick like every single time. Like what was the like you talk about mindset being your weapon, right? And obviously the
Yes.
internal work, not just from a physical component, but what were you envisioning every time before you would kick the football? Like what was the thing that you kept
Yes.
seeing?
Queen, how often have you said, I spent my whole life studying, I've been to school my whole life, and I've actually learned nothing that teaches me the tools and strategies to build a successful business in the outside world. You've probably spent thousands of dollars on courses, or you've heard fake news from business gurus. Well, I'm here to give this incredible news to everyone here right now that this is Queendom University. Get out of debt and actually start making money in the online space, knowing and having the foundations to build a successful business. Now I'm talking because I have gone through the trenches. I have been a fitness coach, built my online business as a pro athlete, and now I am a business coach. You'll go from having absolutely no idea what your business is through in the 8 weeks, learn the foundations of knowing what your purpose is, your vision and mission, and also understanding your business values with the execution to know what that business is. You'll also learn branding, social media, content strategy, marketing, and more importantly, how to sell. With Queendom University, it'll cut out the bullshit and remove all the fluff and get you working specifically on your business so you can execute this in 8 weeks to get ready to launch. I wanted you to have something where you get to access something straight away, where you get to fast track your growth, as well as remove any doubt, any overwhelming sensation or stress, or the question that everyone seems to ask, where do I begin? With Queendom University, you'll be able to build wealth, freedom, and at the end of the day, be an entrepreneur and be able to say, I have finally built my own thing, my own business. And I've stopped making money for someone else, and I'm now making money for my own empire. Queendom University.
So that's the important mental work. So I also was a drama major my first 2 years in college, and I continued to do a little bit of acting. Most of all, finding just confirming I really wasn't that good. But but the discipline was so helpful because it puts you in that you rehearse, you practice, practice. It's not just visualizing it, but what am I going to feel in those circumstances? How do I make my practice so much like the game that when I'm in the game, I can just say I'm back at practice? How do I make it so it's healthy and not neurotic? Mm-hmm. And so that was crucial to my training. And so the more times you do it, you develop a way to unlock that. And so I'll just tell you, it's really a great analogy, since we only have about 20 minutes to unlock more of this stuff. Later in my career, I got better at it, Tamara. And what I found was, for those athletes or people that are trying to put themselves in the right state, the practice and rehearsal is crucial. As an athlete, it especially because it's a 1.2 second, 1.25 second time when the ball snapped, caught, put back, and you kick it, and you've got 11 people trying to block your kick. It's not like in Australian rules football where you're by yourself and you either make it. You have people trying to block it who are very large and very strong and paid millions of dollars. And what I found was, as I'm approaching the ball, I'd say left foot, because I was a right-footed kicker, and the left foot was my alignment with the target. So think what that would be for you as you watch this. And then explode. Explode represented the word that worked for me. For you, for others, it will be a different word probably. But to explode meant permission to attack, not to try to kill it, but to attack, to be bold, to be aggressive, to have the confidence to let it go, because your discipline and your training has been good enough that that part of the brain that's released is infinitely more intelligent, thinks infinitely faster. And so your flow into the action is much more natural than the self-conscious brain, which too often gets in the way. And so I went from breaking the record, which was 72%. I raised it to 77%. And then just when everybody was saying I was getting too old at 34, I raised it to 87% my last 3 years in the league. So now they're even better. But, back then we had fields that were chewed up and the balls were a little bit stiffer and et cetera. So we did okay. We set a new standard.
It just brings it's the, I've got a tattoo that says flow, right? Because I feel it's such a beautiful element to anything in life, with discipline in your routine and in yourself, and, the flow that you have in your business, in any aspect of life, especially with your sport. So I really love the analogy around, like, if you're forcing something, it's never going to really be effective. But when there is this beautiful, I want to say, dance with the energy systems and confidence, as well as the internal stuff, when you flow into your movement and that kick, I really see how that can really resonate with everything you've done, which brings me to what I really think is important for the listeners around everything and what you're doing, from being a footballer to a business owner now, and someone who is so invested into helping others. Like, what are some of the key discipline and routine that you do, that you did then, that you have really implemented now in your life, even more so, like, with everything that you're doing now?
Well, my time wasn't my own when I played for the Chiefs, right? I mean, I had a schedule and there were meetings, and then there was time for lunch, and then there was getting ready for practice, and then there was weightlifting during and after practice, and running and kicking and all those things, and treatment too, taking care of yourself. And then finally, basically the schedule is a half day, 2/3 of a day on Monday, watching film and training really hard, which is really hard because it's the day after the game. Tuesday you have off, and that's when you can do more things in the community. Wednesday is a big day of game plan, and that's 8 a.m. till I would leave at a little bit about 6 o'clock every night. Yeah. And then Thursday is the same, but a bit more implementation. And Friday's a little shorter day, but it's more sort of, okay, let's see what works here, because the game's on Sunday, and then Saturday's more of a walkthrough. So your time is not just your own, but after your career, a lot of players have trouble with that, because that requires discipline, and that requires also making choices about what your priorities are. I got to work with Tony Robbins, and before my those years in the 90s, I have to tell you, his tapes, I didn't like his seminars so much because they were a bit too much about group pressure. But individually, we really make, I think, our growth when we find the source to motivate ourselves. We can obviously always can learn from mentors and wise figures like Tony Robbins, like Tamara, perhaps. Yes. But we have to do the work ourselves. And that's to be what it's all about. So I've been on the Think and Grow Rich tour with Sharon Lecter and my friend James Whitaker, and a good Aussie, by the way, as you know, and yes. and others, and they're great people. And the Think and Grow Rich tour is really, to me, most importantly, helping people say, how do I align my true priorities? How do I do the hard work to say, this is my number one priority that I will never compromise on. And this is my number two. Now the others they're probably, you and I probably have 8 or 9 of the 10 most important sense of values the same. It's where those fit in. How much does risk fit in? How much does comfort? How much does adventure? How much does creativity? How much do relationships? How much, do individuals recognition, etc. But that's important. I think when you get those, then suddenly it's as if you've tuned up your car, and you also have a bit more of a GPS, right, that tells you where you're going. Yeah, but you still have to do the work. So that then becomes, for pro athletes, a very difficult transition, where 80% of athletes have problems, A, in their private life with their marriages and relationships, and B, is that a cat?
It's a cat.
Well, my cat's usually here, so I got 2 cats, so they'll probably
felt really bad.
I knew it. I
knew we were going to be friends. Exactly. Sorry,
and that's okay. And then 80% in relationships, but also 80% in the first 3 years in financial distress, which is not necessarily tied directly to how much you made. So people that made $100 million are almost just as likely to have financial problems. So there's the discipline. It's funny. You think, gosh, discipline on the field. Don't know I apply it elsewhere, but it's not always there. And even for those of us that were lucky enough to have a great education, I went to Dartmouth College. After my career, I went to Harvard, to the Kennedy School of Government for a master's. It was not a weekend program, thank you. It was a 2-year program. But even then, it's always, again, the application. It's the getting up when you're tired. It's the follow through. And by the way, there's a lot of research now that the brain literally has markers when you set a goal and you follow through and made it happen. There are memory markers and I think they're character markers that reinforce that habit of follow through and achievement each time you do it, no matter how hard it was. And there's the opposite. There's a vacancy when you started something, but you didn't finish it. And so you can literally turn into from a dirt path into a highway based on clarity of thought and goals, and B, the follow through itself. And that's when, you become a good monster.
The Think and Grow Rich book, the first one, changed my life because it brought up a lot of my own, I'm going to say demons around money, just because my father was a gambling addict. I came from being homeless as well. So for me, there are a lot of underlying unconscious sort of money habits that I wasn't aware that I was attracting. I could make money really quickly, but holding it and just having that level of awareness was such a big shift for me. And that book saved my life. So it's really nice to hear like the connection piece of you touring with that. And I think, as you said before, like the football lessons and the discipline and how you then brought that into your life now is incredible. Like it's so true around follow throughs, like, committing to the hard shit, and I swear on this show, by the way, so you're allowed to swear. But it's just a shift in mindset that you can see the connection pieces where everything is a mirror, right? How you do one thing can be how you do another thing. And it's just about reprogramming that, which brings me to what I really, really want to talk about for you now is like, again, your support systems you've had. Have you ever gone through a phase where you've lacked in, I guess, getting out of the scene of being a footballer into the world now? And you were saying before, athletes, when they finish their career, essentially they don't know what to do. Did you ever have a big question mark of like, what do I do now?
Absolutely. One thing I did do was I write a lot of poetry, which really helps, by the way, because it centers my right and left brain. It helps integrate those two, the creative and the structural. And I was invited to read my poetry actually at Harvard. And Kelly McVeary, who was in the Harvard School of Education, and it was National Poetry Month, said, come on up. So I went up there and I started a program. I started a lot of programs. So I'm a serial entrepreneur for philanthropic things that never stop. So darn it, we just get them done. Whether it's adult role models for youth, whether it's AmeriCorps for President Clinton, whether it was Kick with Nick for cerebral palsy. And in this case, it was Native Vision. So, oh gosh, how did I get on that? Sorry.
No, we'll go to that because it's important to you.
Yeah. The ability to take my poetry and use it as a framework for approaching the head of the Harvard Native American program, whose name was Robin McClay, and tell him what I was doing with Native Vision, which was a sports and life skills camp with Johns Hopkins and NFL players and NBA players and soccer stars, and going to the reservation where no one had ever come out on a regular basis and saying, this is what I love the most. You, whether you're homeless, whether you're an inner city kid, whether you're from a wealthy family, it doesn't matter. You matter. All of you have special gifts. And that mattered a lot. And Robin McClay said, you should apply to the Kennedy School. We have a mid-career program. You've worked in the White House in drug abuse policy for Reagan, helped launch the Points of Light Foundation for H.W. Bush, help not only launch but get past AmeriCorps, which was the domestic Peace Corps, which was modeled after Kennedy's Peace Corps, and which was the first major legislation for President Clinton. And you should apply. And I wrote 6 pretty darn good essays and took the tests, and I got in, and it felt like that was a great way to end one career and begin another.
Mm.
And then, of course, the great subset of that was being surrounded by some pretty darn impressive people that were members of the 200 members of our class. So I'm glad I did that because it's hard. It is its own addiction to the attention. Certainly there are a few pretty ladies out there during your career. Addiction to, just
Women, sex.
recognized. By the way, thank God for women. I just want to say, I'm glad they're there. They balance us out. And also thank God for teammates. What's really interesting when I get together with my former teammates is it's not the same, but it's a lot of similarities. You've been in the trenches. You've been exposed to tremendous criticism and pressure, physical stuff. You've been naked, in the locker room, and, nobody has any secrets anymore. And so you have a bond there that is really extraordinary. But then you have to get over the addiction of that intimacy of being part of a great group all together, and then not getting that recognition the same level. So for me, it's been, wait a minute, I have other gifts. What are my other gifts and how do I use those? And so the more I've done that, the better I've gotten at it. Yeah. It becomes a self-actualizing, self-affirming activity. And that's a discipline to me. And so you can also surrender to maybe the number one thing of all, which is gratitude. If you somehow can master that in the midst of that Aussie and American term shit, through all the difficult stuff, to stay grateful, it'll bring out your best side. It will attract you to bigger and better people. And, hopefully it'll enable you to reach people that have the capacity, like everyone does, I think. Mm. Everyone has a monster, everyone has a beast, and everyone has an angel. Mm. And it's really about what you listen to and then what you feed.
Do you know I have names for these two? So Bubble is my Brazilian, passionate, fiery side, but then there's Blade, who's a little bit more the German side and gets shit done, but can be also quite direct and nasty. So
you can get this done.
Yeah.
He will conquer you.
Get down.
Get down.
So yeah, I always balance between the two, and there's always voices in my head, but that's another story. Hey, I have to share this only because the gratitude piece is massive for me, and it's going to tie into what I really want to ask you next. And I think it's just really important because at the start of my transition in my career from professional athlete to a business coach, I noticed that there was a lot of like, I need to get here, and there was nothing where I was feeling grateful for the growth that I had. And it wasn't until I started to really hone in on the gratitude and the intention, but also the mission, that I started to see that it's not about me anymore, and it's not about making money for me. It's about the greater good and to serve. And I finally found an organization that I'm now raising money for in Vietnam. And I know you're so big on a foundation that, this is a continued passion of yours that I know you really are big on. And I know the audience would love to hear more about this amazing foundation and why you chose this foundation, or why you're working with this incredible group of people that are changing the world. Hey, beautiful kings and queens, are you right now in a space where you're ready to take action and build your business, yet you struggle where to begin? You're feeling stuck and overwhelmed with all the things you need to do when it comes to building a business. Build the business of your dreams in the online space and be in the arena of all the incredible, great humans out there that are building 7 to 8 figure businesses. Now, the foundations that I truly believe in that you are going to learn through this membership is sales, marketing, content creation, social media, money mindset, and of course, branding. Now, all of this will be accessible for you to be learning what is currently hot right now in the market and how you can create your own business and build a successful business in the online space. All you have to do right now is DM Empire in my Instagram or email myself and my team, and we will get the ball rolling so you can have your empire and start making moves in the online space.
Well, thank you. I'd like to hear more about Vietnam. My very best friend's wife is from Vietnam, and no one that I've talked to has said anything but the best things about the Vietnamese people and how Americans are treated there. It's like, gosh, talk about exploding stereotypes and overcoming what guilt we might have from all the horrendous damage that was done to Vietnam itself on both sides. But gosh, my work and my foundation started with Kick with Nick for cerebral palsy because my aunt had cerebral palsy. And I started to think all of us, Tamara, have a disability. It may well not be cerebral palsy. It may well not be physical. It could absolutely be spiritual, emotional, could be a blind spot that we have, and we always have that work to do. And that keeps us, that's the thorn in the side, if you use the Bible, the part of us that keeps us humbled. And so I started to think, all of us have a disability, and we have to, that's our training in life. And that's the energy, that's the tension we need where we are, gratitude where we are, but also the hunger to keep working to get better. In fact, I had a professor at Dartmouth College who was 94, Tamara, and he was a very popular speaker. And I walked with him and his 88-year-old wife, Millie, from campus.
Wow.
Arthur Miller. He was the greatest teacher probably in the country in the history of film and Hollywood. And as we're walking back from the lecture, it wasn't, hey, let's get a beer or, thanks for coming. It was more, how'd I do? How can I get better at 94? And I want to be that way too. I want to be, how can I get better tomorrow when I'm 104?
Yeah.
So having said that, getting better reflected in each of these stages of work, whether it was adult role models for youth, reaching out to all the youth serving agencies in Kansas City during a time during the late 80s and early 90s where the drug issue and the gangs and crack cocaine, all those things were happening. And I learned some in the Drug Abuse Policy Office in Washington. And then starting Native Vision. And by the way, Adult Role Models for Youth became Youth Friends, ended up growing to 3,000 volunteers working with 20,000 at-risk youth. 80% or more were African Americans in Kansas City.
Yeah.
And that went on for, all of these went for over a generation, if not still going, which I think is where you really can have impact. And then Native Vision, which is now in its 27th year, was on Oprah with General Colin Powell as the best new program for Native youth, sports and life skills. It's now 7 sports. It's 40 tribes. It's 700 kids that for 3 days come together from all over the country and play sports, but also get mentoring and get access to Johns Hopkins programs that help them deal with family issues and addiction issues. And, they have high levels of teenage suicide and depression, et cetera. And so those all were stepping stones. And then, of course, going to Harvard, I developed an experiential leadership program because with Native peoples, if you think about the Aboriginals, obviously, and I was just in Hawaii, all of us, but particularly the indigenous peoples of the world, have had their land, their roots taken from them and have their sacred land stomped on. And without belaboring too much into the guilt part, it helps you understand what homelessness can be. It can be homelessness just in the sense that you've had your home taken in terms of your land itself, your people's traditions. And that's why I just so admire the simplicity and the clarity of the value system of the indigenous peoples I've worked with. I actually went on to be nominated first by Clinton and then again by W. Bush, and became founding director and then chairman of the American Indian Education Foundation, which was really strange because I was the only white guy on there. I thought I had some Indian blood. I have 3% African, by the way, but I don't have Indian, but spiritually, I really connected with that. And so that led to, as I look back now, it's more clear, working with the homeless itself, and just once again realizing, God, this emotion comes up every time. But real people right now in Phoenix, for every one person, and this is pretty much national too, for every one person leaving homelessness, 2 are entering. So all of that stuff saying we have a great economy, bull, and if that was the case, that wouldn't be happening. Secondly, in evictions, which means people are kicked out of their homes, over 7,000 people each and every month the last year have been kicked out of their homes. That's over 91,000 people in a community of 5 million. That represents actually 91,000 evictions, translating to more than 200,000, 250,000 people out of a town of 5 million in Phoenix, temporarily at least, if not permanently homeless. So when you begin to notice the simplest thing, and I believe Jesus was the greatest ever at this, was to be able to look somebody in the eye and say, how are you? How you doing?
Mm.
What's going on? You are powerful. You are important. I'm here for you. I'm taking you in. What's your story?
Wow.
Because their whole lives on the street is transactional, usually, with government being a transactional thing, not really any emotion in it. It's just, here's your hot dog, here's your bed, here's this, here's that. And so what we're dedicated to is a humane connection. So we give out 1,000 flowers just because.
Yeah.
We give out 1,000 $5 gift certificates to McDonald's, not because it's healthy, but because it's just a gift. We give out 1,000 pairs of underwear, 1,000 pairs of socks, which, by the way, when you wear the same pair of socks for 6 months, if you try to take those socks off, you lose most of your skin on the bottom of your feet. If you want to torture someone, try that on for size.
Horrible.
1,000 T-shirts, thousands of pieces of donated clothing, incredible music. I've designed 2 murals at St. Vincent de Paul. This is all at St. Vincent de Paul shelter. And we serve about somewhere between 800 and 1,000. On Easter, we served 1,100 people. We have 2 chiropractors, an acupuncturist, 5 hair cutters. We have a friend who's an expert on women's care products and makeup because, wow, would anybody on the street ever think someone would care when they're exposed to the extremes of temperature, particularly in the summer when it's 115 to 120? Last year was 53 days over 110 in Phoenix. And yet someone's saying, hey, how about if you are reminded what it feels like to feel like a woman, to feel feminine, and just all those little things that are just sort of showering everyone in there with a sense that you are the priority today. That becomes a cleansing thing for me. When instead of what the old notion of Christmas is, the old notion, I'm not sure if you have Thanksgiving in Australia, but in America, for so many people, Thanksgiving is eat a ton of turkey and food and watch football and burp and fart and oh yeah, I feel so thankful. And you say a prayer at the beginning and wow. But for me, that experience of 4 hours dedicated to that, 4 or 5 hours, and in particular 3 hours right there with them, and getting all of the volunteers. We don't get 50 volunteers. We have somewhere between 150 and 400 volunteers. And we spend 15 minutes with them beforehand saying the most important thing you're going to do is not going to be what you give them in terms of something material. It's going to be looking them in the eye with respect, with love, because that becomes the best kind of gift, the best kind of skill, talent, to be present for them. And it always is as a spiritual mirror to ourselves. So when we do that for others, we leave. God, I love my life. Look at me, you blubbering fool. But, just I feel so great going home. This is Thanksgiving and Christmas. The gifts, are you kidding? Yeah. I remember this spoiled little jerk when I was 12 years old. My dad gave me a bike. And that was great, but I'm like, what else? That's not what Christmas is about. And we've noticed, I just met a lady who's a doctor here in town today, and she has an 11 and 9-year-old. And she said, can I bring my kids? And before she even finished, I said, absolutely, because we're all going to be addicted.
Yeah.
It's a question of what we're addicted to. And if we can be addicted, especially as a young person, to what it feels like to help somebody, particularly if you're 10 years old, to an adult who is scary, who is a stranger, who is unpredictable. And then suddenly we've helped them feel better. Wow. And by the way, I've been taught by so many homeless that have had everything taken from them, and they have a peace because they haven't had everything taken from them. They've got a piece that no one can take from them because they've had all the junk ever thrown at them and more. And so that kind of confidence and equanimity in life, that is so powerful. And think about all of us and, that they've had everything showered on them. And kids, in Scottsdale, the joke is you get your, 16 years old and you get your, 2021 BMW and you're disappointed because it's not a 2024, as opposed to, and that's just transitory. I know these are lessons that you've heard before, but but they remain lessons unless and they remain here as opposed to in here until you go out there and do it. And then what we try to do is make it comfortable for everyone in there, whether it's the volunteers or our homeless brothers and sisters. And we have a saying at St. Vincent de Paul, which I love, which is there's no difference between the giver and the receiver.
Yeah,
and that's so powerful, because I think there's some subliminal message for some of us. Look at me. I'm so great because I'm lowering myself to you, bringing you up, as opposed to we're in this together. And I think the Australian culture, I think, understands we're all lads. We're all ladies and lads together. I think there's a whole tradition of that. Mates.
We're all mates. And I have to just say thank you. That was beautiful. And I feel like it's really important for the listeners to hear, like, one, how giving and how you're big on contribution. And please, we would all love to donate and support this amazing cause, which I will put on the description too. And I think it's just a really big reminder that we can all be an ego and be all, look at me, look at my success, but nothing is as more rewarding when you've made money, but you're also so big on giving money and giving things away to the people that are really at need. And I think it's just a big reminder for all of us that it's probably the most, if not the best feeling when we're doing something like that for the greater good. So Nick, I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you. Let me tell you too, I think change, Tamara, change is like, to me, a 1,000-mile long battleship. And if you move it 1 degree, that's huge. And what I believe that we've accomplished, and I love to stick it to California because they just need it. And frankly, the homeless in Los Angeles and San Francisco, it's the worst it's ever been. And the only difference we've made is by humanizing the homeless. We've helped by simply making sure that when the media on a regular basis come down and see the situation and tell the stories of individuals who are homeless. Yeah. And suddenly they realize, wow, that person was, literally randomly, that person was really articulate, and they were also grateful. How did that happen? And so it explodes the idea that everybody's addicted, everybody has mental illness issues. If you and I were on the street for 6 months or a year, we'd have mental illness, what I call situationally based mental illness issues that hopefully we can grow out of once we leave that environment. But so to me, we've humanized that, and that's how change comes about. When a big government, a big, amorphous society begins to drill down to the individual stories of people, then suddenly they're treated differently. They're treated as human beings. They're not just treated as, a huge bunch of trash in a human waste bucket.
And I just love that you said that the people who've gone through the hardest things in life are the ones that are the most humble and kind and nurturing and still wanting to support other people. And it's just amazing, right? It just makes you look at yourself and go, where can I be better in every part of my life? So I really, really am really grateful for you to be on this show. And I could talk to you all day, and I know you've got a lot on, but I always ask this.
If we want to take 5 more minutes, we can. I will say this. I'll make this pledge to you.
For me?
You get somebody to fly me and my teammates. I'll bring a couple famous football players to Australia, and we could identify a group of children and obviously a homeless group, with an agency that's reasonably stable, and do something and get some of our Aussie football players to join us and just say, maybe this might be something we can do on a regular basis, and every year we do it and just say, hey, let's have some fun doing something really meaningful.
I would love that. Let's make a promise on this show. Let's make this happen. Pinky swear. Yay. Good. I have 2 questions. One, how do you define success? Yes. And the last one I'll ask later.
I define success as lifelong curiosity, lifelong creativity, and lifelong contribution. That we keep growing in wisdom. The American poet Robert Bly, wrote a book called Iron John. And Iron John was a symbol that he believed was emblematic of our culture, particularly Western culture, forgetting about the importance of the elder figure, of the mentor figure, like I told you about with Dick Johnson, because I've left out many other great ones that were there for me as well, but also being open to that. But success to me is that sense of wisdom, which then means you flip it and you know that your role is to be a mentor for others as well and help every young person. I was with Dr. Oz the day after the Super Bowl. He'd invited me to do an event called Health Corps. So now I'm working feverishly with him on getting more NFL players and helping kids be more healthy. And there was a fifth grader, which is about 10, 11 years old. And I'm signing a poster for him. It looks a little bit like this. And they have a camera because they wanted to film what Health Corps is meant to be. Yeah. And they're filming Dr. Oz and me. And they filmed this young person. And he goes, "This is the greatest day of my life. It's the best day of my life." Yeah. And I posted it. Dr. Oz sent it to me because the kid said, because I've never had a famous person make me feel important.
Wow.
And
huge. My heart.
And so to me, I said, I hope you'll remember this. And then someday you'll be that person for another person that needs it. And when you create that generational perspective, it gives us a tumbling forward. We hear it, pay it forward, a tumbling forward of those lessons in a positive way, like an uphill snowball towards more wisdom without screwing up too many metaphors. And that's success. That is success.
Yeah. Mentoring others and giving other people the opportunity to pay it forward as well. Nick Lowery, I am so grateful for you to be here on Keys to the Queendom. I can't wait to see you in person. And of course, now you're pinky promised you're going to be coming to Australia and we're going to be, I don't know, playing football, whatever we're going to be doing, raising money. But we always finish this amazing episode with a question, which is, if you were to give the listeners a key, which is like the key that's going to unlock their queendom, their empire, whatever that looks like, what is that one key for them to finish off this beautiful episode?
Well, the key is absolutely, it is persistence. Yeah. I mean, I've signed, Winston Churchill is noted for a famous speech where he said, never, 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 never give up. And that was it. But only Winston Churchill could say it that way. But it is that if you continue, no matter what, and you keep asking, another incredibly powerful figure in history, again, tied to World War II, Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, was in the midst of the concentration camps to have the capacity to say, what does God want me to learn from this? How am I supposed to keep learning and growing and being better? And if we can habitualize and discipline that question, only good things come from it, as opposed to, why does this always happen to me?
Love this.
Why do bad things happen to me? Because your mind wants to answer like a little puppy dog and go, well, actually, you're a great person, but since you asked, there must be a reason. So you're not so great a person, blah, blah, blah. And all these negative things come out. So being able to have the discipline to keeping on, and then to ask the question, how do I grow in wisdom? As simple as that is, when we're on our deathbed, to have the peace and know, gosh, what a great ride, and who knows what's coming forward. What a gift that is, to not have regrets, because it wasn't just giving up on yourself. You didn't give up not only on yourself, but on the God-given person you were meant to be.
God, that was amazing. Nick Lowery, thank you so, so much for being on Keys to the Queendom. And all my beautiful listeners, make sure this will be in the description box to support this amazing foundation of Nick's, to follow him, to say hello, and
NickLowery.com, NickLowery.com. And by the way, if you send me an email there, whoever you are, I return my emails. and usually within 48 hours at the most.
Yeah.
But thank you. God bless you. And I want to hear next time. Let's talk more about sports. I want to hear about your professional career.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I was a professional bodybuilder here in Australia. So yeah, we'll talk about that next time, my darling.
Which way to the beach, baby?
That way.
Yeah.
I love you so much. Oh, thank you so much. And everyone else, this is Tamara Meyer, your host with Keys to the Queendom. I started to realize there were all these identities I had in myself. And when I was dabbling in the life coaching space for me, I started to understand that really what my pain, the thing that I kept hiding, the thing that I kept suppressing, the thing that I was ashamed to talk about was my purpose to share, was my purpose to help you guys. Everyone in this room today is here because you see something in me that you see in yourself. That's it, right? So if you can really bring that into your heart and you think about your ideal clients, if you were to show more of those parts, wouldn't you attract more people that you want to work with?
Inspiring. She brings so much knowledge and resource and information, but also fosters a beautiful, atmosphere of connection.
I felt like I was in a room with some really powerful women.
My favourite mic drop moment was creating impact, showing up so that we can reach as many people as we can.
My key takeaway was having the confidence to just show up.
I wouldn't be where I am today without her and without her knowledge and guidance, and she's made me really believe in myself.
My key takeaway from this is that you should dream big and that you are capable of it, and with the right tools and the right help, you can achieve whatever you want.
I love you.